Folks, let me tell you who your real enemy is when buying Toronto real estate, and then get into the latest home prices and insights for the city of Toronto for week ending November 27th, 2024. We recently, representing a buyer client of ours, we put an offer on a property, and it was a long negotiation. It lasted 2 or 3 days. We're going back and forth. In the end, we couldn't reach an agreement. Now, the property had been sitting on the market for a few months, and we thought we could, well, at least we could try to get it for a bit, let's say at a discount. The property had been sitting there. My client had a certain price in mind, thinking that it had been on the market so long, the seller should be negotiable. Well, the seller was somewhat negotiable, but not enough. And in the end, we walked away with the attitude of, let the property sit on the market another 2 or 3 weeks, and then we'll come back and see if the seller is more negotiable then. Well, shortly after we walked away, the home sold, and it sold for about $50,000 more than what my client was prepared to pay for the home. And my client was like, wow, I can't believe it. Now, when we first were going back and forth, my client was kind of negative against the seller. The seller should be more reasonable. If they don't sell now, they're not going to sell. We're getting closer to the winter months. You know, the seller really should take my offer, was my client, the buyer's attitude. Well, the seller got $50,000 more. And now my client's attitude was against that other buyer. It was a negative attitude, like, why would somebody pay more? Why didn't they negotiate harder? Why didn't, why is another buyer prepared to spend more? And I'm telling you, your real enemy out there, if you're looking to buy, maybe another buyer. If you think about the whole process of a buyer puts in an offer, look, the buyer wants to pay for as little as possible. The seller receives the offer, and a seller wants as much as possible for the home. That's not a secret I'm unveiling here. Everybody knows. Buyer wants to pay as little, seller wants to get as much. But let's assume there's a reasonable, realistic number that makes sense that both sides could agree with. If the seller feels there's another buyer prepared to pay more, if they think they have a chance, they're going to wait and they're going to say no to your offer. But if the seller doesn't feel there's another opportunity, and we see that when properties are sitting on the market, there's very few or no showings, the seller doesn't know where the next buyer may be coming from, those sellers are more negotiable. So, like in my situation with my buyer, we tried. And along came another buyer that was prepared to spend more. And even my client, the buyer, now can't blame the seller for rejecting our offer, but he's upset at this other buyer. And this is what you'll find in some of these other neighborhoods where sales are happening. It's the buyers that are keeping the prices up because they're prepared to pay the prices. And in other neighborhoods, there are no buyers lining up. There are no buyers coming to the table. And you see prices starting to come down because eventually sellers need to sell. And at some point, you're going to see prices coming down if the buyers aren't out there. So I'm telling you, in negotiation, oftentimes we take the stance that the seller's the enemy when we're trying to buy. In some situations, it's not the seller. There may be, as was in our case, another buyer prepared to spend more. If you feel this video can help somebody you know, please pass it along. If you get value from what we're talking about, subscribe. And if you want to speak with me about your real estate situation, selling, buying, it's really simple. There's a link to my calendar here, another one below this video in the description. Click on that, book a time that's convenient for you, and we'll talk about whatever's on your mind. Now, let's get into the numbers. Here we go, folks. City of Toronto, the freehold market. I have a summary here going back 3 months. I've got detached, semis and towns. I do have condos on this chart just for reference. The condo show is a different show that's airing tomorrow. Today we are going to focus just for the city of Toronto. So I've got a line here. The fall market is this side of the line. When we look at the detached market here, around 1.5, a little more. We're basically here at 1.548. The week before we were higher than 1.6, then 1.570. The market has not really changed much for detached properties anyways over the fall season. Very little change one way or the other. The gap between the average condo price and the average detached price, $877,000. We're going to start off with the detached properties. For week ending November 27th, these numbers are broken down by week. So week ending November 27th, 125 detached properties were sold. 24 of those were at $2 million or more. Looks like sales are starting to trend down. They are trending down. Average sold price is $1,548,000. It's tough to tell which way prices are actually going right now. There hasn't been overall, if we look at the bigger picture, the whole fall market, not a lot of change, although there's parts where prices are going up, prices are going down. But 1,548 is one of the lower average sold prices over the fall market. Compared to last year, 1,548 is 1% lower. The median price of $1,280,000 is 6% higher. The dotted line, that's a 4-week moving average. For when we look at median prices, the line's kind of flat. When we look at the average sold prices, looks like it's trending down slightly since, say, the beginning of October. 125 we said were sold. 54 of those, 43%, sold at list price or more. Listings are trending down. Active listings are trending down. And months of inventory sitting at 3.3. If we kind of go back to middle of October, kind of seems about average, around 3 months of inventory, slightly higher, slightly lower, seems to be the norm over the last, we'll say, 5-6 weeks or so. So 3.3 months of inventory. That's for the whole city. If we look at the detached market, broken down into 9 different sections, we say 3.3 is the months of inventory, and that's up from the previous week. In all of Toronto, except Scarborough, every single neighborhood, 1 week to the next, months of inventory increased. Scarborough is the only area where months of inventory came down last week for week ending November 27th. It's sitting now at 1.9 months of inventory. It's a bit of an aggressive market out there. 51% of those properties sold at list price or more, and they had 46 sales, which is 36% of all the sales. It seems like I'm pushing and tooting Scarborough. I'm just calling it out for what it is. Scarborough is a powerhouse as far as an area when it comes to real estate activity for detached properties across the city. I'm not talking about average price, just volume in general. Let's look at semi-detached properties. For week ending November 27th, 35 sold. 6 of those were at $1.5 million or more. Sales trending down. Average sold price way down from the previous months, down from the previous few months. It's now at $1,148,000, 1,148, 6% lower. The median price of 1.1 is 4% higher than where we were this time a year ago. Months of inventory has been trending upwards. We're now at 2.6 months of inventory for semi-detached properties. Freehold townhouses, 12 of them sold. 3 were at $1.5 million or more. Average price going up to $1,288,000. 1,288, It's 23% higher than this time a year ago. The median price is 26% higher. And months of inventory slightly up over the last week. It's now at 3.3 months of inventory. Here's a quick summary. Detached semis, towns, in most cases, we're hovering right at the bottom end of a balanced market. In most neighborhoods, in most areas, that's what you're going to experience, a balanced market when it comes to detached properties across the city of Toronto. Thanks for watching. Have an awesome day.